You want to talk about personal responsibility? Let's talk about personal responsibility. You make the decisions. I suffer the consequences. And you have the nerve, the audacity to tell me to pull myself up by bootstraps. You cut off. You take 40% before I see the check. Put your hand in my pocket, get your foot off. A hobby, tell me what to eat and tell me what to smoke. Tell me I'm too stupid to be trusted with a vote that actually matters. Yeah, you'll give me the ballot, but the choices are pre-screened. You already had it mapped out, locked down. Before I hit the booth, democracy is theater and you own the whole production crew.
Master State, get your foot off my neck. Master State, I didn't ask. Master State, get your foot off my neck. You take it, never give back. Get your foot off, Father. Master State, not my God. Get your foot off my neck.
You are a monopoly on violence, dressed up in a facade. You got the only guns that get to be called legal. You got the only courts where justice wears your eagle. You got the only prisons you decide who feels them. You got the only narrative about who the villain is. And when your boys in blue roll up on my street, they answer to you, not to me, never to me. You write the laws, enforce the laws, interpret the laws too. There is no check on power when the check is also you. You tell me to work harder, pull myself up, be a man, while you got your hand inside my every single plan. Zoning laws, license and permits just to breathe. You manufactured every obstacle and told me to achieve.
Get your foot off my neck. I didn't ask. Get your foot off my neck.
You take it, never give it back.
Get your foot off my neck. Not my God. Get your foot off my neck.
You are a monopoly on violence, dressed up in a facade. Let me be specific about what you actually are. You are not a social contract. You are not a shared agreement. You are not the will of the people. You are a gang that got big enough to call itself a government. You have a monopoly on force and you use it against the same people. You claim to protect. You tell me I'm not smart enough to choose my own medicine, but you're smart enough to start a war with my kids as the soldiers. You tell me I can't be trusted with my own body, but you can be trusted with the nuclear arsenal. You talk about bootstraps while your boot is on my throat. You talk about freedom while you hold every single exit. You are not my government, you are my owner, and I am done pretending there is a difference. You find me for the garden that I grow on my own land. You tax the rain that falls on what I hold in my own hand. You tell me that my children belong to the state first, and send me the bill for the privilege of that curse. You'll bail out the banks that collapse the whole economy. Then tell the broken, that's just opportunity. You'll fund the war machine to the tune of $1 trillion, and look a hungry citizen dead in the eyes and say we just don't have the billion. Personal responsibility coming from you, the ones who make every consequential decision that I live through. You don't want me responsible, you want me compliant. You want me productive, taxable and silent, and just conscious enough to think that I chose this just awake enough to service your interests.
Master State, get your foot off my neck.
Master State,
I see you. Master State, get your foot off my neck.
I can read you.
Master State, as my savior.
Master State,
Not my Lord. Get your foot off my neck. Off my neck. Get off me. Get off me.
get off me. Personal responsibility. You said that you makes every decision that shapes my entire life. You said that to me with a straight face. The audacity of the master is that he genuinely believes he is doing you a favor. He is not. He never was. Get your foot off my neck.
Everybody, Yeah, I was just on mute. Unfortunately, I crashed my laptop. This is like the second laptop that I've crashed in the last 12 months, and so now I have to use my old laptop to get through this live stream. I would have started earlier, but I was trying to fix it. So, I think there's a lot of interest in this topic. I've already had a PhD respond to one of my videos, basically expressing the same sentiment. So, if you all have read my book, you know that I discuss occupational licenses in chapters 5 and 6. I didn't really make the connection between the American Medical Association because I didn't figure out until after I had already finished the book. But there's a lot there. Some of this stuff is just historical, and some of it is somewhat conspiratorial. And I know some people are going to be interested in the conspiratorial side of it, but I have a lot to say about occupational licenses. Now, they tell you that these occupational licenses were created for public safety, to maintain competency, to protect the public. And for some reason, people can't even conceive of the notion of a free market. They act as if these government granted monopolies have always existed, and they have not. I did give a brief overview, but I just want to go through it in detail in this live stream. Now, most of these occupational licenses came during the 1930s when everyone was distracted with the Great Depression. These private guilds lobby to give themselves a monopoly. And the two big ones are the American Medical Association and the American Bar Association. These are voluntary associations because they don't actually exist within the state. They're private organizations. The state versions of it are mandatory, like the state, like the California Bar Association or the Nevada Medical Association. Those state associations are compulsory, whereas the national version of it is voluntary. But they do engage in a lot of lobbying. They do recommend policies that most states do adopt. Now, Abraham Lincoln was able to become an attorney without a law license. Under common law, there were no licenses. Attorneys were admitted to the bar after a 10-minute oral examination. And it wasn't a statewide bar, it was a local bar. Most attorneys were self-taught, or they did apprenticeships. There was no formal education. They studied on their own. Now, I don't want to bore you with the details of it. I guess I'll just give a quick overview because I'm more well versed with the history of the law licenses than I am with medical associations. But I know enough about it because it's very similar in all of these vocations. Now, with the practice of medicine, under common law, there were over 150 medical schools. They were small, affordable, and accessible to working men, especially those, people of color who had just survived the Reconstruction, the Civil War, and they were trying to integrate into society, get jobs, become upwardly mobile, become part of the working class. And again, there was a free market. Within the medical profession, there were competing philosophies: conventional medicine, physicians, neuropaths, homeopaths, chiropractors, midwives. The public actually had a choice. Prices were driven by competition, not by a government granted monopoly, not by these guilds, not by the cartels. Then came the robber barons. This is the conspiracy part of it. Some of it can actually be sourced. Some of it can, I mean, I'm not going to say all of it is, but it is what it is. You guys can take this with a grain of salt. You can confirm it, research it yourself, because that's why I didn't put it in my book, because to me it makes sense, but I can't prove all of it because none of this has been some of it has been documented, but some of it does get conspiratorial. In 1910, the Carnegie Foundation published what became known as the Flexner Report. Abraham Flexner was not a doctor, never attended medical school, but he wanted to increase the standards of practice for the medical profession. According to Flexner, there were too many doctors and there was too much competition. So his solution was to mandate that all medical education conform to a single, extraordinarily expensive university model, one in which only the wealthy could afford to attend, and only the wealthiest institution could afford to host. The results were devastating. Of the 7 medical schools specifically created to train Black physicians, 5 were shut down completely. Women's medical colleges were eliminated. The homeopathic, neuropathic, and holistic medical schools lost their legitimacy overnight. By 1930, the total number of medical schools in America had been cut down nearly in half. The supply of medical professionals were cut in half. The prices soared because of this artificial scarcity. Entire communities were cut off without access to medical services. And of course, those who orchestrated all of this claimed that this was progress, that they were increasing the standards of care, that they were actually doing the public a favor. The Carnegie Foundation did not stop with medicine. By 1921, they published a Reed report on legal education. Alfred Reed, the report's author, actually warned that the ABA, especially, that if they were to eliminate night schools and part-time programs, they would make the legal profession more elitist. They would be granting an un-American monopoly and closing entry from the working class. Now, of course, the American Bar Association did not follow this report. They decided to do the exact opposite. Instead, they followed the Carnegie's prestige, which would basically eliminate opportunities for Blacks, immigrants, and Jews. And I've read this history, right? I've read the minutes from the Bar Association when they explicitly and openly refer to Blacks as the N-word. They refer to Jewish attorneys as ambulance chasers. And this is the reason why they wanted to increase the standard of care, because they believe that there were all of these undesirable people getting into the practice of law, and they didn't believe that they belonged there. They didn't believe that they had natural ethics. There were these statements about how there were certain racial groups that were naturally endowed with ethics, but other groups had to be taught ethics because they didn't have it naturally. That's why they created these character and fitness requirements, so that even if you did meet their standards, they could still arbitrarily keep you out. I know it's a lot of material, and I don't know that I want to go through all of it, but suffice it to say, Abraham Lincoln was admitted with only a 10-minute oral examination. Then they got rid of what they wanted an alternative to the apprenticeship programs because that was limited to those who had access to law firms that were willing to teach. So then they did create the law schools, which were affordable back then. And most of the law schools had a diploma privilege, which meant that if it was accredited by the American Bar Association, you would receive a law license upon graduation. There was no bar exam, but then they started seeing that there were too many Jews, immigrants, and blacks becoming licensed, so they wanted to eliminate that. They created the bar exam, which bore no relation to the actual practice. It was extraordinarily difficult, but it did not meet the psychometrics. And for those of you who don't know what psychometrics are, psychometrics means that they're supposed to be the psychological professors or professionals who interview current practitioners, and then they make sure that standardized tests actually are reflective of the skills used in that specific vocation. Now, around the same time, they created the IQ test also to create a racial hierarchy, completely arbitrary. That's why, I did take that IQ test, but I don't put too much stock in it because I already know the history of IQ tests, that they were basically designed to validate racial superiority. There's certain types of intellect that can't even be measured. And so IQ tests are only measuring a certain type of intellect. It doesn't mean that just because you got a high IQ score that you're necessarily intelligent. But these standardized tests were really they're basically measuring IQ. Now, John D. Rockefeller created the General Education Board in 1902, and he pumped over $180 million into funding universities, medical schools, and high schools across America. Rockefeller was the one who created the education industrial complex, and an entire industry, an entire racket based on education. Again, before this period, most people were self-taught. They learned through apprenticeships. The Rockefeller Foundation heavily funded the American Law Institute, which produced the Model Penal Code in 1962. This is important because one of the crucial factors in their unconstitutional monopolies, with these occupational license requirements, are penal codes. In these penal codes, they have these unauthorized practice statutes. Like there's an unauthorized practice of medicine statute. There's an unauthorized practice of law statute. Most of these they're uniform throughout the country. It's not just a misdemeanor. It is an actual felony to practice law without a license. Even if the public chooses to hire someone because they think that they're competent to assist them, in whatever way it may be, keep in mind that there's nothing empirical about the law. The law is largely opinion-based. When you file a lawsuit, you are petitioning the court for a redress of grievances, which is protected under the First Amendment. Under the First Amendment, you have a right to petition the courts. You have freedom of association. But legal opinions are opinions, which means that they are core political speech. So the fact that the state is licensing opinions which is essentially what they're doing with law licenses, is completely illegitimate. They don't want competition. They want to gatekeep. They want to decide. Well, first of all, they want to indoctrinate you on what the law is. Right? The bar exam is measuring opinions. And these attorneys are basically programmed to believe that the law is whatever the Supreme Court says it is. They're at the whole education model is based on case law, not statutory law, not constitutional law, not even common law. So that's why you get these perverse results, because all attorneys, all doctors are indoctrinated the same way. And I know the medical profession is supposed to be more science oriented, but even they get shit wrong. Even they are indoctrinated. We saw how they got the COVID debacle wrong. How did they get it wrong? They all were trained in science, and yet they all believe, because the CDC told them that a virus can exist outside of a host for 72 hours, which is not true. It's not viable. It's not contagious. Yet they published their original report saying that COVID can exist outside of a human body for 72 hours. That goes against basic science, yet these people all believed it. Why did they believe it? Because they have been indoctrinated. This is a part of the indoctrination process. It's like a hazing ritual where they become fodder for the state. They can't think. This is the whole purpose of the licensing model in the first place, gatekeeping. If you go against the grain, you risk being brought to financial ruin. So therefore, the state has a complete monopoly on freedom of thought, and this has deleterious consequences for the public, because now you don't have access to the services that you want. Now you're relegated to whoever the state says that you're allowed to hire or pay for, and it's completely at your expense. So now they get to jack up all these prices. If you wanted to hire somebody who's not licensed or not approved by the state, you don't have that choice. Now, Andrew Carnegie, through the Carnegie Foundation, funded the Flexner Report, which decimated the independence of medical education. It eliminated the affordability of legal education, making university attendance mandatory as the gateway to professional credentialism. Elihu Root was a corporate lawyer, Secretary of State, Senator, and the Rockefellers' own legal counsel. He used his influence as a leader within the American Bar Association to push for the standardization of legal education alongside exclusionary lines as the Flexner Report had imposed on medicine. Now, there's a quote from John D. Rockefeller. The quote is, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers." And clearly that's what he got. I want you to understand that the way things are has been orchestrated by these people, by the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Carnegies. So you don't get thinkers in the practice of medicine, the practice of law. No, you get fodder for the state. Now, the Rockefellers' wealth was built on oil, but the Rockefellers used the Flexner Report to consolidate the medical profession and to eliminate competition from competing healthcare philosophies. The homeopaths, the herbal, the practitioners of herbal medicine, and they could make a huge profit from this. And this consolidation resulted in medicine that was primarily drug-based, right? That's why you have to take all these drugs, and that's all that they're willing to prescribe. They're not even going to consider alternative medicine. It's not covered by your health insurance because it's not approved by the FDA. That's why all these people are dying from cancer, even though there are known cures that are not government approved. A lot of these cures are inexpensive. By the way, this as an aside, a lot of the pharmaceuticals came from basically appropriating medicine or the practice of medicine from the Native Americans. The Native Americans already knew what to take. And so most of these medications are just artificial versions of things that already exist in nature. But when they make it artificial, when they turn it into a chemical compound, then they get to put a patent on it. Then they get to have a monopoly and charge all of this money. I guess I can talk about the Rothschilds. Let me read some of these comments because I know that some of this shit, you know what, when I'm done, I'm going to, I guess I'll open this up if anybody wants to chime in on this. What's the pamphlet? I'm trying to, I know they published a pamphlet. I'm trying to find the name of it. By the mid 19th century, the Rothschilds were the most wealthy and most financially influential dynasties in the Western world. I know there's some conspiracies about them controlling the centralized banks, including the Federal Reserve, strapping most Western countries in permanent debt. I'm not even going to go into all of that. I'm just going to talk about the so-called conspiracy with the Bar Association. I haven't been able to confirm it. I have read it many times. I hear them talking about, they talk about this a lot in the so-called sovereign citizen movement. The reason why I don't talk about it on this channel is because I have not been able to confirm it. But I actually have some friends on Facebook who they refer to law licenses as the Rothschild BAR license or BAR attorney. And the term, according to these people, BAR stands for British Accreditation Registry. And so what they're saying is that American law is basically admiralty law under the British Crown, and it's constitutional, and that basically all attorneys are agents of a foreign institution. Again, I have not been able to confirm it, so don't say that I'm just, that I'm actually telling you that this is a fact. I don't know. I don't know. I tried to trace it back to its origins, but they do refer to the title, like they talk. There's a specific provision in the Constitution against titles of nobility. And so these attorneys refer to themselves as Esquire. And so to these people, law licenses are unconstitutional. Now, I know what the word bar means. There literally was a bar in the common law where you had to be let in. And again, that was after a 10-minute oral examination by local judges. And then they would actually have a list of attorneys who could practice within that local jurisdiction. There was no license. Now, there are some conspiracies about skulls and bones, the Freemasons, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group. William H. Taft served as both President and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Apparently, William Taft was initiated into the Skulls and Bones. I don't even think this is a conspiracy. Like, this is documented. They do exist. The Skulls and Bones have influence in American law, finance, government, and media. The Council on Foreign Relations was founded in 1921. It was funded by the Rockefellers. They had off-the-record meetings to decide legal policy. These people were unelected, by the way. So during the 1930s, when we saw all of these occupational license requirements being imposed, these unauthorized practice of law and unauthorized practice of medicine statutes being passed, this was done. I mean, you can say it was done by those institutions, but when you go behind the curtain a little bit, deeper than that, the Freemasons were behind it. Governors, state legislatures, judges who passed these licensing laws were Masons. And I don't even think this is a secret. I mean, you can say the only part that hasn't been confirmed is the extent to which they directly influence public policy. But they did have these meetings. All of those public officials were Masons. President Roosevelt was a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason. And if you go to certain cities, like I was in Chicago probably about 8 years ago, I saw this big building for the Freemasons. Again, this is not a secret. It's not like it's being held in some enclave that nobody can see. No, they have these buildings in public view. I believe there are even Mason buildings here in my home state. I've seen them. I've actually talked to some of these Masons. There was I don't know if I should share this on YouTube. What this Mason actually told me. um I know about the Eastern Stars. I know about all that shit. And I can't say that it doesn't exist because I've met some of these people. Now, Dr. Morris Fishbein ran the American Medical Association from the 1920s through the 1940s. He weaponized state licensing boards to revoke the credentials of any doctor who offered affordable care, who worked in a group clinic, who operated outside the approved fee-for-service model. He ran a protection style seal of acceptance program through which companies paid the American Medical Association for public endorsements, and companies that refused to pay were publicly attacked. He crusaded against what he called quackery. When they call somebody a quack, I want you to know that that is suspect. Dr. Berger, they say he's a chiropractor. He has a YouTube channel, and he's actually healed a lot of people. What's the other one? Doctor, he's not even a real doctor. The black guy who died a few years, he was recommending these herbs to cure many people's ailments. And Dr. Sibby, they say he's a quack, but he's actually healed thousands of people, if not tens of thousands. There was this whole lawsuit where the state sued him because they didn't want him to use the term doctor. By the way, the term doctor is not only used in a medical context. Technically, I can call myself a doctor because I have a doctorate degree. But the term doctor predates the state. It predates medical licenses. So why is the term doctor now only exclusive to those who are licensed by a medical association? Now, the American Bar Association's leadership between the 1920s and 1930s. Oh, by the way, y'all, every state bar association has a committee called the Unauthorized Practice of Law Committee. And what they do is they file lawsuits against people who are allegedly practicing law without a license. It's not even about a prosecutor. It's the State Bar Association. They file civil lawsuits to get injunctions against people, to impose bank levies. A lot of times they don't even give you a jury trial. I don't know how they get around that because they just do summary judgment. And so it's supposed to be prosecuted criminally, but they do it civilly to get around affording you a jury trial, to get around giving you the right to an attorney. They have actually destroyed people's lives, people who are qualified, people who have actually sought their services. I actually know someone who was practicing. I don't think he would use the term practicing law. He was providing legal services, but there is a loophole there's a loophole in the law where okay, the attorneys who practice law who are licensed by the state, those are attorneys at law. You can actually be attorney in fact without a law license because you give power of attorney to someone to represent your interests. They call themselves attorneys in fact, or they call themselves private attorney generals. And you don't need a license to do either of those things. And I verified this. I verified it because I was in contact with these people, and a lot of these people have sent me their documents, and I did confirm they did get some of the case law wrong. I don't. They do make up these fake. I don't know if they do it on purpose, but some of the law that they cite is not. I mean, when you actually trace it back, it's like that case didn't actually say that. But I mean, I guess I could show you an example of what these statutes look like, but they're actually very oppressive. And prior to these unauthorized practice of law statutes, people did provide legal assistance without a law license. A lot of it is not even considered practicing law. A lot of it is just regulatory. A lot of it is just administrative. I mean, you could be a banker and draft a contract. Bookkeepers advise small businesses. You just provide advice. Advice is your fucking opinion. But now I'm providing an opinion on legal matters is against the law. Mind you, this is core political speech. Again, when you petition the courts for a redress of grievances, you are engaging in core political speech. Political speech cannot be regulated by the state. Um, I think I've already talked about the character and fitness requirements. I mean, I could talk more about that, but it's so arbitrary. They don't even tell you what the standards are. It's just basically they leave it open ended because if they don't like you, then they can just use that as the final barrier that you have to cross. And I think law licenses are even worse than medical licenses because law licenses are the only licenses in America that come from the judiciary rather than the legislature. The Supreme Court issues rules that have the same legal effect as a statute. So non-justices pass rules. These are not procedural rules. They're substantive. And they have granted themselves this authority. Through their own case law, they have granted themselves authority to regulate the practice of law. And what the case law says is that the judiciary has inherent authority to regulate the practice of law. Really? I thought state actors had to have enumerated authority to exercise any authority. I thought rulemaking was inherently a legislative function. But no, they have given themselves a monopoly, and even a statute that tries to rein their illegitimate authority is ineffective. Why? Because of judicial supremacy. When the judiciary interprets the Constitution, it has the same legal effect as the Constitution itself. So a simple statute cannot overturn their interpretation of the Constitution. The only thing that can check them is a constitutional amendment. So there have been attempts by legislatures to rein them in, to say, no, the legislature should regulate the practice of law. And through their own opinions, they have said this statute is unconstitutional. I could go into the history behind America's Bar Association. I don't know if I really should bore you with it, because I've actually brought this up in litigation, and their excuse was, well, that happened back in 1920. That's not relevant to bar associations today. Yes, the hell it is. Yes, the hell it is. Because I'm telling you the history of why they created these requirements in the first place. They did revoke bar memberships based on race. They did require applicants to disclose their race on applications. The ABA's canons of professional ethics strictly ban solicitation, restricted contingent fees, and prohibited advertising. Why? Because the corporate elite firms did not need to advertise. So you could not get clients without advertising. They got their clients from their country clubs and their university networks. These black attorneys were constantly referred to in derogatory terms. They were called boy. They were openly called the N-word. They were not referred to as attorney. They were not able to effectively represent their clients because the judges were biased against them. And these licenses were not just limited to professional vocations. They eventually trickled down to skilled trade also, to barbers, plumbers, independent contractors, teamsters. And Milton Friedman had a lot to say about this. If y'all would like me to review some of Milton Friedman's commentary on law, occupational license, I can do that. I'm not going to do that right now. Just let me know in the comment section if you want me to review Milton Friedman. But these occupational licenses are always lobbied for by the practitioners. Never, they don't come from the public. The public never asks for any of these occupational licenses. And of course, most people don't know the history. So if you try to say, okay, there should be a free market, the public will basically argue for policies that go against their own rational self-interest. They have been so thoroughly indoctrinated, they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. They don't even know that they're asking for policies which hurt them. Why? Because of Stockholm Syndrome. I even know law graduates who have not been able to obtain law licenses, yet they will vehemently defend the institution, even though it has completely screwed them over and brought them to financial ruin. Why? Because of their Stockholm Syndrome. Because even though they're not a part of the club, they hope to one day be a part of the club. So they will throw other people under the bus and align themselves with power in hopes that maybe one day they can be a part of power. I I mean, what they're doing is weaponizing the Constitution against the people. And Charles Hamilton Houston said that a lawyer is either a social engineer or he's a parasite on society. Most attorneys are the latter. They're not social engineers. Not only are attorneys, well, this whole notion that they're just these corporate attorneys, they're actually not. There's actually case law showing that the role of an attorney is a public office. They are officers of the court. They have a duty to uphold the Constitution. They serve at the public's pleasure. Yet they are private capitalists. They don't have a vested interest in upholding the Constitution. Now, in 1925, there was there was an alternative to the American Bar Association referred to as the National Bar Association. They opposed the disparate impact of these law license requirements. For those who don't know, the National Bar Association is not as prestigious as the American Bar Association. This was founded by a bunch of Black attorneys. Again, this is a voluntary association. I used to be a member of it, but whatever. Why am I going to participate in that? When, you know, I guess I'm not going to talk about myself, but I do like the fact that they have published papers speaking against bar exams and these licensing requirements. So, getting back to these unauthorized practice of law statutes, after the Great Depression, we had the New Deal. The federal government was inviting industries to write their own codes for fair competition under the National Industrial Recovery Act. And these professional guilds told legislatures that they were not creating a monopoly. They were simply following the federal government's lead by establishing fair competition standards to stabilize their industries. They did not merely define the profession, they created boards to govern it. And these boards are able to create rules and policies without ever having to return to the legislature for a public vote. So, again, I know more about the legal profession than I do about the medical association, but medical associations are self-governed. They're governed by other attorneys. It's a classic case of the fox guarding the hen house. Now, they'll say this benefits the public because only attorneys are specialized enough to understand the law to enforce it, but no, they protect themselves. You would get a different outcome if you had laypersons being a part of the ethics enforcement. Economists refer to this as regulatory capture. It's supposed to protect the public, but it actually does the complete opposite. In fact, if you report these corrupt attorneys to the Bar Association, they will sit on it, not take any action, but then when those attorneys get out of line, like for example, do something that may actually benefit the public, then they have all this dirt on them, and then they will threaten to impose sanctions or suspend their licenses. So they do weaponize it. Now, if you try it, I think reporting judges is even worse because they don't do shit to judges at all. Judges can literally get away with murder. That's why when people talk about how Trump has absolute immunity and they're so outraged, I'm like, this shit didn't start with Trump. The judges have absolute immunity. So if you're going to be outraged about Trump, maybe you should be equally outraged with these judges. Now, there was an era in the Supreme Court called the Lochner era. Excuse me. This is roughly between 1897 to 1937. During the Lochner era of the Supreme Court, private contracts were held to strict scrutiny. Any government interference with a private contract basically had, I don't even think they even articulated, but basically it had to be narrowly tailored to achieve a compelling state interest. I don't know exactly what the standard was because I know they didn't actually articulate strict scrutiny back then as a defined test. But suffice it to say, most attempts to regulate private contracts by the state were struck down. Attempts to impose licenses by the state were struck down. All of this changed with Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal. Right. So after the Lochner era, well, fundamental rights like speech, religion, voting, those rights receive strict scrutiny, but economic rights, the right to earn a livelihood, the right to run a business, the right to practice a trade, they were reduced down to rational basis, which is the lowest level of scrutiny. I know this is very legalistic. People are probably getting bored. I'm not even looking at the screen to see how many people are still here right now. I'm just getting this on the record for those of you who may be interested, and maybe you can go back and I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not assuming that everybody's going to benefit from everything that I'm saying. Some of it, I know people don't like when I talk about the law, but I guess if it isn't relevant to you, you can disregard maybe you can at least get something out of the conspiracy theories. But once the right to earn a livelihood, once the right to earn a private contract was reduced down to rational basis, then we saw all of this government overreach. Occupational licenses grew from 5% in the 1950s to nearly 25% of all vocations currently. Now there is no legal protection for the right to earn a livelihood. Now the states can run amok because they only have to articulate a rational basis. And their rational basis is that they're protecting the public because the public is so vulnerable. Before there was caveat emptor, buyer beware. People were considered competent that they could decide who was effective in representing their interests. Now everyone has to be infantilized and treated like children. the beautiful lie. They told us that these occupational licenses were about safety. They were protecting the public from quacks and those who were incompetent, the unlicensed surgeons, the untrained electricians, the people who braid hair without a license, because they did come after that too. They said that these people who braid hair at home should be licensed by the state, even though they're not using any chemicals whatsoever. Why? Because the people who were braiding hair were competing against professional cosmetologists. Those cosmetologists did not want competition. Why should you be able to make money at home and compete with me? I went to school for this shit. I got a license from the state, which gives me a monopoly. So you should not have the ability to earn a livelihood. You should starve. And I want you to know that these people do want you to starve. This is one of the most oppressive systems in America. So for the people who are ignorant, when they say, oh, what rights are you championing for? Like, how are we not free? What should we be fighting for? There's oppression all around you. You're just too ignorant to see it. But the power to license is the power to destroy. You can totally bring someone to economic ruin by not allowing them the ability to earn a livelihood. The right to earn a livelihood is a natural right, but the state can prevent you from earning a livelihood, which basically is a derivative of your right to life. The right to life includes the right to earn a livelihood, because the right to life includes the right to maintain your life. That's what I was talking about in that live stream I did the other day about the philosophy of liberty. You have a right to life, liberty, and property. If it is fair trade, if you did not exploit anybody, you did not take advantage of them, you had a private contract, you both agreed on the terms, that person decided to hire you, you didn't manipulate them, then what business is it of the state? What business is it of the public? What is the state's interest in a private contract? There is none. Besides the fact that this is animus laid bare. They want to protect the practitioners from competition. The practitioners pay all this money to their guilds, to their associations, to eliminate competition. So those get the State Bar Association, the State Medical Association, deploy state violence to protect their monopoly. They want to make sure that they protect the profits of the current practitioners. This is why they're able to charge you $800 an hour. This is why they have their patents. This is why you don't have access to medical services, because of this racket. Now they're going to tell you, oh, you would not want an unlicensed surgeon to perform brain surgery, right? No, I disagree with you. You know, there are people who may have been licensed at some point, but maybe they let their licenses lapse, excuse me. Maybe they were nurses, or maybe they had some type of other experience. Maybe they just did it at home. I don't know. But if I know this person, if I believe that they are competent to assist me in preserving my life, it should be my choice. I should have freedom of choice to decide who I want to contract with without any interference from the state. If I want to hire a crackhead off the street to perform brain surgery on my brain, that should be my fucking right. But it's not your life, it's not your body, it's not your choice. The state has a say. The state wants to dictate all the terms, but you have to pay all the damn costs. The state is not facilitating any of this. The state is not giving you access to health care. The state is not giving you access to an attorney besides the fact that they have to appoint an attorney in felony criminal cases, because they don't have to appoint an attorney in misdemeanor cases like traffic offenses. No. They have champagne taste with tap water money. They want to give them the monopoly to say that it protects the public from those who are incompetent and unfit. The unscrupulous professionals who would take advantage of the public. It's completely self-serving. You didn't ask for this shit. And now that they have given themselves a monopoly, now you don't have access at all. Now you have to pay $800 an hour to hire some fucking rent-seeking parasite. Now it is a criminal offense for you to earn a livelihood. You may have God-given talents that you are not able to use, even if someone wanted to hire you. Now you're forced to live a life of poverty. Now you're brought to financial ruin. And for whatever reason, these people think that you should still love the system which has oppressed you and forced you to live a life of poverty. You're supposed to be loyal to them after they have completely fucked you over. After you have gotten all this education and all this fucking student loan debt, which is not dischargeable, by the way. This is another fucking okie doke. Because they assume that if you got an education, that somehow you inherently increase your earning potential, that you should not get the benefit of increasing your earning potential and then get to discharge your student loan debt. Never mind the fact that they don't have the proof that you actually increase your earning potential. In fact, many people have decreased their earning potential because not only are they not able to work in the profession in which they went to school for, they're also overqualified for the basic jobs. So they're not going to get hired for that specific job that they went to school for, but they're also not going to get hired for any job. They're actually worse off than if they had not gone to school in the first place. They have scarlet letters. It's worse than being a fucking convicted felon because at least there are programs to help convicted felons. If you have a professional degree without a license, for all intents and purposes, you are a convicted felon. And notice how that stalker weaponizes that, how he wants to kid. You know, that his biggest critique of me is that I allegedly failed the bar exam. I never said that I did. I never said anything. He's making a lot of speculation. But the reason he's doing that is to basically put me in the same category as a fucking criminal. Failing the bar exam, not being able to achieve some type of professional license is basically a condemnation worthy of being treated like a fucking criminal. Basically, I deserve to starve. I deserve to be miserable. I deserve to live in squalor and poverty. I deserve everything because I chose to get an education. I deserve to be treated worse than if I had never gotten an education in the first place. This is my fucking fault, even though I had no control over any of this shit. I didn't know how this system fucking worked. There are tens of thousands of people who do have professional degrees, but they don't have a fucking license. They're completely competent. There are people who are willing to help them, there are people who are willing to hire them, but they're not allowed to hire them. They have massive student loan debt, but they can't use any of their God-given talents to earn a livelihood. You know, my first job after law school was working at fucking 7-Eleven for minimum wage. They don't give a shit about that. The government wants their fucking money. Pay these fucking student loans, even though we're preventing you from earning enough money to actually pay them. It's no different than the bankers who basically would chop your finger off. We don't give a shit where you get the money from. Pay us our damn money. If you don't pay it, you lose your fucking finger. We don't care about your fucking excuses. We don't give a shit if you starve. We don't give a shit if you have to sell your pussy. Pay us this goddamn money. No fucking empathy. Again, this is supposed to be your fucking state. These people are supposed to be representing your interests, and yet they're fucking oppressing you. And they expect you to support your own annihilation when the system has completely fucked you over. They're punishing you for doing nothing. I could talk about my own personal story. I'm not going to do that. I could talk about how my life was completely ruined. It's irreparably. Even if I were to get at this point, I don't even fucking want it because it's been irreparably ruined. There's nothing that can be done to repair the damage. And I'm so fucking resentful. I don't think I would be an effective attorney. I'm so fucking angry. There's nothing that can be done to. If I had just gotten it straight out of law school and I probably would not be the way that I am right now. I probably would not be an anarchist. I would not be so resentful of the fucking system. But they have absolutely fucked my life over. And I know some people would say it's my fault. I should take responsibility. I don't feel that way. I don't believe that I did anything wrong. I don't believe it's my fault. Let me read some of these comments. Well, now that you brought him up, he's one of those people who's telling me that I should forget about myself and I should help other people. Why? Why should I help these people when they have not helped me? You know, I actually had a nonprofit when I was trying to organize to fight against the system, and some of these people were actually my friend. I thought they were my friends, but they basically went against everything that I was fighting for and basically said that I deserved it. They decided to side with the state. And these are the people who I'm supposed to defend. I'm supposed to go against my rational self-interest and be a sacrificial animal and support the very people who advocate for my annihilation. Absolutely not. So don't come up here on my channel telling me that I should care about these people when they don't give a fuck about me. They side with the fucking state. Now, the reason why I don't give a fuck at this point is because I didn't know what I know now. It wasn't necessarily that I wanted to make money. I thought I could actually affect change. I thought the legal system actually meant something. I have been completely disillusioned. I know how corrupt the system is. So again, it was not primarily about money. I thought I could make money in the process, but I really thought that I could actually make a difference. I thought I was going to be some fucking Johnny Cochran and just fucking shake the system up. Now that I know how the system actually works, it's not attractive. It doesn't exist. The dream is a fucking illusion. I could be fucking fodder for the system. I could make money by exploiting people, but that's not what I signed up for. I didn't know. I didn't know what I know now. If I had a fucking time machine, I would do things differently, but there's nothing that can be done. I can't put the fucking genie back in a bottle. Now I'm just fucking stuck. I don't. Does anybody have any comments about occupational licenses? Okay, I guess I don't know what to say because none of these comments are about the topic. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm boring people. I don't know what to say. All right, y'all. I'm going through these comments and I just don't see anything about occupational licenses. So yeah, I get that's why I don't talk about this shit because I know some of this shit goes over people's heads and I don't know that. And I think that was the problem with my book that I was talking about legalistic shit that most people are unfamiliar with. But I do try to explain it. I don't think that I'm anything special. I don't think I'm probably of ordinary intelligence. So I do try to simplify it. And if people don't understand, I can explain it. Okay, yeah, I understand that. I understand that, but I did try to explain the medical profession also. It's the same source. The Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, they orchestrated all this shit. And in fact, when you go into many of these law firms, you will see the skulls and bones. You will see the fucking Baphomet. I'm not saying all of them do this shit, but I have gone to law offices when I have seen the fucking skulls and bone symbols. No, I'm not. No, I'm not going to do. I know why people say that because I was a part of the Occupy movement, by the way, and I would try to get them to organize protests against the bar association, which I did. I did eventually convince them to do it. They always wanted to protest the police department. I'm like, the police have no institutional power. The only thing the police, well, they can shoot you, obviously, but at the end of the day, the power starts with the legal system. Their, their primary responsibility is to investigate crimes in order to turn it over to the district attorney. Basically, the police are at the very bottom of the hierarchy. It really starts with judges, and then it trickles down to attorneys. I tried to explain all this shit to the Occupy movement, but they didn't understand the shit went over their heads. Every time I tried to organize, they would try to derail it and say, "Let's go protest the police." Fuck that. Everybody, there's enough protests against the fucking police. When are y'all going to actually go to the root of all this shit and actually challenge power? I know people don't understand how this shit works, but no, not the police. There's enough people doing that shit. No, judges have far more power than the police. No. I'm glad you said this because now it gives me an opportunity to address it. Judges, oh gosh, we have a system of judicial supremacy. I would say judges are even more powerful than the fucking president. Their interpretation of they're more powerful than the legislature. Maybe I need to do another live stream talking about judicial supremacy because I can explain how this whole system works. No, judges are far more powerful than a damn police officer. Hmm. I don't even know if I should do that because I feel like this is very disappointing for me because I really do want people to understand. I want people to understand how the system works so they can actually do something about it. But every time I try to broach the subject, it's just I feel like the shit falls on deaf ears. I mean, I can explain it to attorneys because attorneys understand it, but attorneys have a vested interest in protecting the system. This is how they make their money. They're not going to do anything. So my only hope is to educate the public, but they're telling me this shit is going over their head. What am I supposed to do? This is the reason why I get so frustrated. I feel like I'm trapped in the system. People keep saying, oh, if you don't like it, you can do something about it. I'm trying to do something about it. I'm trying to teach people about how the system works, but they keep telling me to do something else. They keep telling me that the shit goes over the head. So what am I supposed to do? I'm just trapped. You know what? I'm considering doing it. I'm not. I'm actually seriously considering doing that. Maybe I'll do that. Occupational licenses are very life bonding. I want to be away from that. No, I actually do appreciate that because now I know why people are responding the way that they are. I get it. Um, so I take it that people did not get anything from this live stream. I don't. I mean, gosh, I just let me end that. I didn't mean to do that. I would open up for discussions, but I don't think anybody took anything from this live stream. So I don't want to talk about something else. So if anybody wants to come up and talk about something else, then this live stream is about occupational licenses and how it destroys people's lives, how it restricts the public's access to services that they need. Um, I, this is what frustrates me because I already know it. I know that it's a waste of time to even talk about it. This is a very serious issue. If you're not allowed to earn a livelihood, then you may as well just be dead because you can't maintain your life. The government is preventing you from doing that. When I talk about government oppression, this is one of the worst forms of government oppression, preventing you from earning a fucking livelihood and forcing you to live a life of poverty. All right, y'all. Um, I don't think I'm going to be talking about this topic again, just because of the reception that I get when I do talk about it. I'm just going to go ahead and end this live stream. Y'all have a good day.